is it going to make combat more complicated? Because one of the things that like I have seen and maybe noticed is like, for example, right? Let's take a look at Final Fantasy 14 for a very specific reason. Fantasy 14 Ultimate Raid. If you guys don't know, I've actually played Final Fantasy 14. I did Savage Raiding, which is almost the equivalent of like Mythic Raiding, but they have something in Final Fantasy called Ultimate Raiding, which it is the ongoing conversation of like what is harder, WoW Mythic Raiding or Ultimate Savage Raiding. I mean, Ultimate Final Fantasy Raiding. I've never done it, but one of the things that's really cool about Final Fantasy 14 that I absolutely love was the visuals. Now, some people might hate it, but it has insanely high amounts of visual animations. You don't actually even need add-ons because the game just communicates to you visually what it's doing so well that you don't need anything to tell you. Like, if you just pay enough attention, the game tells you what is happening. It's more of a scripted type fight versus like some RNG elements like WoW has. WoW also has scripted fights, but not all of them are scripted. In this fight, they're pretty much all scripted. It's really an enjoyable experience, in my opinion. I've done it. It's fantastic. But a lot of the like super insane animations, in my opinion, are able to be pulled off because Final Fantasy, although a little more realistic than WoW, is also still animated, cartoony. It's not ultra hyper realistic, right? Like your New World, like your Ashes of Creation is going to be. It's still a little bit more on the animated side. What I will say, having done a lot of raiding in World of Warcraft and having done Savage Raiding in Final Fantasy 14, is that the more realistic the graphics get, the more difficult it becomes to add more visual animation. I think Final Fantasy has really found the perfect sweet spot of like, we've got more realistic type of an art style and a like the perfect amount of animations where it doesn't feel too overwhelming. What you notice in the New Worlds of the world, what you notice in Ashes of Creation of the world, right? So for example, this is all still early access, so don't judge these graphics, right? But Ashes of Creation, Raid, what I've noticed, even when I look at, like I said, things like New World, all that kind of stuff. No, this is from 2 years ago. Maybe I could try to get earlier footage. At least this is 1 year, at least a little bit better. But if you look at ultra realistic, hyper realistic graphics, when it comes to raid bosses, at least in my opinion, you have to keep visual animations a little bit less. Otherwise it becomes like insanely overwhelming because it too much detail. Like there's just too much going on my screen. That's why in classic WoW, it didn't feel overwhelming, even with 40 people, because it was so basic, right? It wasn't visually overwhelming. Like right now, like this looks pretty good. It's in early access, so the graphics aren't even, fully finished, and it looks like literally everyone only has wannabe, right? Like doesn't look super overwhelming. Final Fantasy doesn't look super overwhelming. And then you look at, like, for example, let's go way back. WoW Classic Ragnaros 40-man raid. And I'm talking like we could even go like way back, but this is going to be the revisited, classic version of WoW, like revamped. But you see even here, is this a melee POV? It's a hunter. I want to see if we can get like all the frost bolts and everything going in. Like, is this a raid prog where they don't actually kill the boss? Oh, no, okay. So he's just dead. I don't want to see a dead POV. This is 14 years ago. They probably got this on farm. It's a hunter. Let's see it. See visually how basic it looks. So because it's so basic, you can afford to have a lot of anime. But in my opinion, the higher the graphics get, almost like the simpler things need to look, which New World has really done that well. New World has really done that well. So for example, New World worm boss, right? I'm not a big fan of this boss, but it is, I think, visually done pretty well. Like when I'm in combat in New World, even when I'm doing OPR, Outpost Rush, which is like the big PvP mode, I never feel visually overwhelmed. Never. Because although the graphics, in my opinion, in this game are absolutely fantastic. It's so simple visually. I never feel overwhelmed. So if they are going to increase WoW's graphics, they would have to make sure they keep the visuals simple. But I'll be honest, I don't know if they could do that without sacrificing the gameplay. I don't want to do Mythic Plus and it feel simple. I want to pull, you know, trash mobs on a fortified week and blow bloodlust and a bunch of mobs cast. I want MDI to see to do the biggest pulls I've ever seen without my eyeballs feeling like they're gonna fall off. So like I think that is where the difficulty would come. Like if we're gonna do a graphical upgrade, add an Unreal 5 engine, I don't know if the game wouldn't suffer. I feel like gameplay would suffer to an extent. I think the cartoony look allows them to keep it simplified with a lot going on your screen without it just being insanely visually overwhelming. So do I think if they went to you know what we watched at first, do I think that would be doable? I just don't know. I just don't know if doing a raid at this level quality would allow for too much combat animation. And I would rather combat animation be high than just world graphics be high. That'd just be my personal opinion to take. But no matter what, I think there's a lot of room for improvement for World of Warcraft to go to the next level. And I think if they find the right sweet spot between graphics and combat, I think it would absolutely take World of Warcraft to the next level.